Well, first of all, this is my opinion, and this is what everything I've learned, mostly from indigenous tribes around the world, and from certain spiritual understandings. But all of this, what's going on at this moment, all these incredible changes that are happening all around the world, from the environment to the wars and all these various things. From a deep spiritual point of view, this has to do with the cycles, and it's the movement of the earth through space and time and dimension. And there are places in these movements when the earth makes changes. It changes. We are about to experience, from my belief of what I've been studying all this, we are about to experience a pole shift. First a magnetic pole shift, then a physical pole shift. And that's huge because it's never happened with this many people on Earth before. The last time, 13,000 years ago, the poles shifted, there were a few million people on the Earth. And if you read the Mayan records, I think it was, I can't remember exactly, but I believe it was 11 million people died in a single night when that pole shifted. And but now we're talking about close to 7 billion, and this is a really different situation. But when we reach these points, the planet rotates and moves into a new sequence, a new balance. And what the Tibetans and the Hindus talk about, and the Sufis a little bit, is that when these kind of changes take place, they are never just physical. They are directly connected to human consciousness and all consciousness. Birds, everything. Cows, it doesn't matter what it is. And plants and trees, it affects everything. They would say that if we were to change the orbit around the orbit that we made around the sun, it would be an utter transformation of consciousness, of how we perceived the reality. There's only one reality. There just is whatever there is. But there's lots of ways of interpreting that reality. And the Melchizedek consciousness knows that there's more than 100,000 basic ways of perceiving the reality that have been discovered. And underneath each one of those is a huge, massive possibilities that fall within each one of those categories. So we're in polarity consciousness, but there are lots of ways of interpreting this, all the possible life forms that can come out of this way of perceiving. We may or may not have an orbital change. I believe we will, but science doesn't believe we will. But science now has come to the place where, beyond any doubt in their mind, they have made a whole presentation through NOVA in 2003 that the magnetic poles of the Earth are about to move. And now they've discovered, if you go to the South Pole, the magnetic lines go out the South Pole, wrap around, and go in the North Pole. But what they're finding, there's these holes all over the South Pole, area of the South Pole, where the lines go out, but they wrap right back in. In other words, they're shutting down. And they now expect that the magnetic poles are going to stop completely, and they're going to reverse themselves. The North Pole is going to become the South, and the South is going to become the North. This is pure science, and they really believe this is going to happen, and it'll probably happen in our lifetime, and because it's increasing so rapidly. Science also knows that whenever the magnetic poles shut down and move to a new positioning, what has always followed behind that is a physical pole shift. And there's a whole study of what they believe of how this takes place, which is extraordinary. I did this on the internet recently. And they think they understand. It's a theory because nobody's been around to actually watch it happen and measure it and know what's happening, but they're pretty sure. So more than likely, we're going to go through a pole shift, and probably inside of this window of time. The Mayans are actually saying we will. And And so that's one thing. And then you have the environmental situation, which will lead, the evidence is overwhelming where that goes. It will lead of one of two places. It'll either lead into an ice age, and which, when it does happen, science is able to show that you have about 20 years of crazy weather, which we've definitely had for the last 20 years, and then 3 days, bam, 72 hours, the clouds back over, and you don't see the sun again for about 90 to 100,000 years. And that's an ice age, the average temperature dropping to minus 50 below zero. And that's probably going to happen too, more than likely. All the ocean currents are slowing down and stopping. These are all the precursors to it. And more than likely, we're going to see both of those things happen in our lifetime. There are those kinds of things would affect every single human relationship on Earth. The financial systems would all collapse, on and on and on and on and on. And scientifically, they don't believe very many people would survive this. Very few. Last time it was really just a handful. And so, yeah, you can look at that from those kinds of levels, and there are a lot of other things that are going on environmentally that are also huge. For example, the carbon dioxide that's creating the global warming. Up until recently, scientists were secretly freaking out because the amount of carbon dioxide that we released in the atmosphere, about half of it disappeared. Poof. Couldn't find it, didn't know where it was for years. This was back in the 80s and 90s. They didn't know where it was, and they were going, how is this possible? Because we should have been in a much more dire situation much earlier. And it was moving slower because the amount of carbon dioxide was disappearing. Then they found it 5, 6 years ago. And they went, oh, wow, we found out where it was. The oceans absorbed it. And they thought, okay, good. Well, now we know where it is. And then the realization came into them. They actually measured the amount of carbon dioxide in the ocean and discovered that the carbon dioxide in the ocean is identical to the way it was 100 million years ago. This means that almost everything in the ocean is going to die. Almost everything. There'll be things that were alive then, like sharks, that were there 100 million years ago. We'll almost for sure be able to make that transition. And a lot of things will, but there's going to be a transformation in the oceans that is just phenomenal. They don't even want to talk about it because it's too scary, because it's the basis, the food chain comes out of the ocean and everything else. So we're in the middle of a physical transformation, of which I'm only mentioned 3 things, and there's about 70 of them. And they are all from a purely polarity consciousness, here I am in a body level, pretty fearful from those kinds of levels. And I acknowledge they're true. And then there's all the conspiracy theories and all the other stuff from ETs and all the things that are going on in those levels and everything else. And a lot of that's true from my own experience. I've actually watched what the Greys were doing and the reptiles and all that other stuff. And yeah, they've been doing this for Hermes 2,000 years ago talked about this. You know, that the ETs were always coming in at these moments when we were at these moments where we are right now at the end of these cycles, always trying to take over the Earth, but have always failed every single time, and they just failed again last year. I don't want to go into it right now, but they failed again last year, but we're still faced with enormous physical changes that are about to come onto us. And I don't want to even try to color it and say that it's not going to happen, because it probably will. But there is something else going on, and this is what the Mayans are talking about, and the Waitaha and the Maori and the Aboriginals in Australia and the Zulus and other people, is that yes, we're about to be hit with something pretty big. But there is a consciousness change, a transformation in humanity that is about to take place also simultaneously with all of this stuff. And more than likely, these incredible shocks are what will be the trigger that triggers us into these other levels of consciousness. they won't be a bad thing. They will actually be a very good thing. And so if these ways of being, this transformation that is about to occur, if this actually takes place, we will not be human anymore. Human, we may look like human, but we will not be human. Human is where we are inside of our bodies, we're looking out through our eyes, and we think that everything that's outside of us is not us, has nothing to do with us, and that we are helpless inside of here. We can't really do anything to change anything, and we don't feel linked. We feel ourselves separate from the reality. And this is a result of what occurred at the last pole shift during the time of Atlantis, and we fell down to this place where we're in this level. There are no mistakes in the universe, not any, not even little ones. And we are moving exactly according to the way the source of life has predetermined. Every word I'm saying has been written down in a book. We right now, there is nothing we do. It looks like there is no free will at all, that we are actually unfolding just like a DNA is in the human in any form. That according to the DNA, that's what happens. That's how the form changes, and it does appear very much like that. However, the Jews have discovered that there are certain moments in time, and they're very precise, and they're tied to the cycles and tied to sacred geometry of how the cycles work, that we can make changes. We can dream new directions. And even that has probably been predetermined already, but it doesn't look like it. And so what's about to happen, if I have it right, is there's going to be a very massive change physically on Earth, but the people who live through this, and we can talk about that in a little bit of why would someone live through it and so the people who live through this are going to go through a transformation where they begin to perceive the world in a brand new way. And through that perception of what is outside of us, and we see it in a new way, new possibilities emerge of what is possible and not possible from what we think, how we think now. And this is quite amazing if the prophecies of the indigenous people and everything are true. They talk about how the quarantine that has been on Earth for a long time. In other words, we've been locked on Earth. We can't leave. We can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. They say that quarantine is lifted and that we are able to move throughout the universe in ways that right now would seem just like crazy to even talk about. But it was crazy only 100 years ago to talk about going to the moon too, especially to Mars. And a lot of things, a huge transformation has taken place just in the last 100 years. And we're not done. We are soon going to realize that we are actually creating our world as with every breath and every thought and feeling and dream and emotion that we have. We're creating not only everything around us, not just our environment and our families and what happens to us and everything else like that, but on a very deep level, we're actually creating the most distant stars. And this would take a long time for our present-day consciousness to understand from where we are at this moment. But it can be explained, and our present-day consciousness can understand it also. We can do this. But it would begin with, and this is where it's just like, when I say these words, people go, well, this is crazy. This is could not possibly be true. But everything that we look at, the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, the galaxies, and all the heavens, it is not there. It doesn't exist. at all. There's nothing there. Even the Indians, the Eastern Indians, 6,000 years ago in the Veda, talked about this very thing, saying that the outer world was an illusion, and they gave the word Maya for it, meaning it's not true, it's an illusion. Through meditation, one can prove this to yourself, that it's not there. But it requires an understanding of a great deal of very technical understanding within the body and around the body, and how this works. But we're eventually going to come to a place where we're going to realize, oh my God, it isn't there. It is a pattern that is generated from the heart to the brain, and we can actually track how these things move from these various things and out. And there's a sphere out here at our fingertips, and the actual reality is only out. The most distant stars are no farther away than your fingers. This is discussed in a lot of the indigenous tribes here in the United States, and they talk about this stuff. And and of course, from our level of consciousness, especially from the scientific mind, thinks this is insane, this is crazy. But I believe we're going to discover that the world that we thought was external to us and had nothing to do with us has everything to do with us, every single thing to do with us. And when we get that, then we can begin to dream in a different way, and we can realize that from within our heart is a very special place. It's where everything was created, everything within the human heart. And when we know this, and we see it, and we see how it works, and we begin to function on those levels, then we can begin to change everything. We could fix the whole world. It only takes 3 people from the ancient traditions, going back 6,000 years ago in their beliefs. 3 people, 1 male, 1 female, and the third person can be male or female. 3 people can come together and fix all the oceans, clear up the ozone, bring everything back into balance, change the world, change everything. Wow.